Welcome to For Better or For Court, Family Law in New Jersey.
Hello and welcome back to For Better or For Court, Family Law in New Jersey with Ms. Alix Claps. Now, Alix is a partner at Heymann Fletcher and a certified matrimonial law attorney with years of experience guiding clients through divorce, custody, and complex family law matters across New Jersey. I'm Evan Mack, and today we're talking about something that doesn't show up in the court documents, but shows up in almost every divorce: the emotional gap between spouses when one person is ready to move on and the other is just beginning to process what's happening. This is why divorce timing matters when one spouse is emotionally ahead. Miss Alix, welcome back.
Good morning. How are you?
Hello. So, what do you usually see when one spouse is emotionally ahead of the other in the divorce process?
It's a matter of degree. If one spouse is way emotionally ahead of the other, it can be problematic because that other spouse can have a tendency to turtle or to what's the one that sticks its head in the sand? The ostrich. And if you wait too long to participate in the process, even if you're not emotionally ready, that can harm you. You can't be so far behind. But the good thing is, to start the process, you don't have to be fully emotionally ready. You just take it one step at a time, little bit by little bit.
How does that emotional gap affect the pace or the tone of a legal case?
I'll say, again, it depends, because it always depends. I think that's one of the cases where having an attorney on your side is a really smart choice. Because if you're wrestling with the emotional parts of it, then you can't think about the logistical and the financial and all those other parts of it. You need someone there to walk you through it. Again, I am not a therapist. I am not here to do your emotional work. I'm not trained for that. I'm not equipped for that. But I can help you make sure that doesn't get in the way of the settlement or the solution that you are entitled to, that you deserve at the end of the process. It's going to set you up for success in the future.
So Miss Alix, do you find that the person who initiates that divorce is usually better prepared than the other person?
In some ways, it depends on what you mean by initiate. In an absolutely astonishing number of cases, one spouse will say to the other, I want a divorce, and absolutely nothing will happen. They will do absolutely nothing to progress things. I find that the spouse who is actually ready to go in and do all the mundane paperwork to file the complaint or to retain an attorney, they're the ones who are in the right headspace to move things forward. And sometimes you end up defaulting the one who asked for the divorce in the first place because they don't actually want to do any of the work.
Do you feel that they're emotionally prepared as well, or do you feel like it's all encompassing thing? Do you see different things from both sides?
There is a huge variety. Sometimes even the people who ask for the divorce, they are the ones who months later say, oh, I can't believe we're actually getting divorced. I thought we were going to reconcile. Twice this week, I have had attorneys come to me from the other side of cases, just coincidentally in this case, both husbands, to say, my client really thought these two were going to get back together.
Wow.
Okay. My clients did not think that.
It's so interesting. What are some common emotional reactions, though, you see from a spouse who's been caught off guard, perhaps, and how can that kind of impact the decision making?
There are kind of two categories. There's the ignoring everything category, and that's dangerous because that means you're not protecting yourself. You're not in a place where you're ready to do the work, to do the research, to do, to pull the documents, to think about what the objectively best decision is for your kids, things like that. Then there's the anger approach, where that spouse is hurt, they are injured, and they're going to lash back out. They're going to make things difficult. They're going to make things expensive. And that's difficult for both parties in a different way than, the again, ostrich in the sand approach is for the one party who may be doing more harm to themselves than the other party.
So how do you help clients who feel like their spouse has been planning this for months while they're just trying to keep up? How do you, as a lawyer, prepare them for that?
Part of the thing that I do is I have the conversation about that. Did you know this was coming? Even when I have the client walk in for an initial consult, I ask, have you had any conversations with your partner about this? Because sometimes I have the one who is more emotionally ahead of things. But when someone comes to me and said, look, my spouse told me they want a divorce, or I was served with divorce papers, I didn't know this was coming. Okay, we're going to take it tiny chunk by tiny chunk, because you don't need to know at the beginning of the case how you need it to end or how it's going to end. We got to start by doing this little bit of mundane paperwork, this little bit of gathering documents, this little bit of deciding on our position on a discrete issue. You don't need to think about everything at once. That's overwhelming for everybody. And especially if you're still kind of emotionally wrapping yourself around the situation. Little bits.
You said it earlier, and you said that you're not a therapist. That's not what you do. Do you know therapists? Do you kind of suggest therapists? Do you kind of navigate them in a direction where they can kind of get that assistance so they can have that clarity before they kind of do things?
Definitely. There are a list of amazing therapists out near me. I mean, sometimes it's as much as go see who's on your insurance, because that's always a concern. But if you
Yeah.
need someone who specializes in, say, domestic violence, or who specializes in infidelity or substance abuse, there are all sorts of ways that either my client or their spouse's uh, emotional issues can come into play in a divorce, and particular therapists are better equipped to deal with particular issues. I've also had a number of clients come to me from their therapists because I've worked with them in other capacities, or they're familiar with me, and they're familiar with a lot of divorce attorneys. It's a small community out here. They may know which one is going to be the right approach for the right client, because not every attorney, the same way not every therapist is right for every client, not every attorney is right for every client.
Well said. So getting back to maybe one side not being prepared as opposed to the other side, can that imbalance lead to unfair outcomes if it's not addressed?
It really can. If you wait too long, particularly if you get served with divorce papers in New Jersey, you have 35 days under the rules to file an answer, a counterclaim, whatever you're going to file in response. I mean, the 35 days is a deadline, but if you wait like 45 days, nothing bad's going to happen. If you wait 60, 90 days and the filing party gets a notice that, hey, this is going to be dismissed, then they've got to move forward. They've got to put you in default. They've got to present their case one-sided to the court to say, here's what I know about our financials, and here's what I think our settlement should look like. The court's going to make a decision based on that information, and the other party's going to be more or less stuck with it. If they don't participate, it can really be a problem. A lot of stuff can be undone, but not everything can be undone.
Are there ways to slow down or maybe speed up the process, to account for that emotional readiness, or is the legal system not really concerned or not even built for that?
It's not concerned with that. The upside is that it's behind. I mean, the system is moving slower than I think it was designed to, and that has the dubious benefit of there can be a long gap in between court steps. So you have to file your answer, and then you've got to stretch a time before you have to do any actual appearances. I mean, if you have issues that you elect to take before the court through motions or something like that, that's different. But if you need to, and that I'm going to interrupt myself, but motions are a way where you can speed the case along. For example, if you have a discrete issue like, okay, my spouse is checked out emotionally and also financially, so
Hmm.
our electricity is about to get turned off because this person has cut off all access to the bank account. The other spouse can bring an emergency motion to the court and say, we got to get something going on here because me and my kids need electricity, that sort of thing. So you can bring those issues to the court and get a ruling in the interim. But if everything's just sort of, we haven't made decisions, everything's sort of just moving along, and we're not really ready to make decisions. And sometimes that comes from both sides too. Like, I've been in cases where the other attorney and I have gone, do these people actually want to get divorced? Because we shouldn't be more invested in getting these people's divorce finalized than they are.
Wow.
So it can work either way. The disconnect problem is where one wants to move it quickly and one is wanting to move it slowly, because that's where things get expensive and contentious.
What advice would you give someone who feels like they're being dragged into this divorce process before they even had time to even process what's happening?
Talk to a therapist and talk to an attorney. You're talking to the therapist about one thing and you're talking to the attorney about something else, but get a professional in there because you're not supposed to have to know how to handle this on your own. Most people only get divorced once. Some people get divorced more than once, but most people only go through this process once. I sit here and I do this process every single day. So I know how to help you find the answers and how to identify the questions that you should have for your case in a way that you're not supposed to know that. That's not your job. That you have a job. You have things that you do and you do them great. But unless you are a divorce attorney, this is not something you deal with on a day-to-day basis. So let me help you figure out what steps you need to take while your therapist is helping you figure out how to cope with those steps.
Yeah, how do you cope with that kind of stuff as a professional? I know it's not necessarily your life, but it is kind of your life because of what you do for a living. How do you keep yourself from getting emotionally invested in this difficult situation?
There is, among divorce attorneys in general, there is a huge amount of burnout because there is a lot of trauma dumping on divorce attorneys. And I think the biggest problem is when attorneys make their clients' problem their own problems. I just try and remember that I'm doing my best work when I'm looking at my client's situation more objectively. I can hear what they want. I can advise them if that's a good solution to aim for, if it's a realistic solution to aim for. But finding that, kind of taking a step back, reminding myself that, this client's issue is not my issue. Part of how I do that personally is I don't check my work email when I'm not in the office. If there's an
Mm,
emergency, you can reach me. You probably, if you are a client, you probably have my cell phone number. And thankfully, my clients do not abuse that privilege. They know if they're reaching out to me, it's because they either say it's not urgent, I just want to say this before I forget it, or help, something really bad is happening and I need you urgently on this Saturday afternoon. They know how to prioritize and they know how to address that. But I'm not going to read my email on the weekend because that's interfering with my life, which is different than my job.
absolutely. Absolutely. So, and on the flip side, what would you say to someone who's ready to move forward but feels frustrated by their spouse doing those emotional delays and delaying the process?
That's again where having an attorney to be that in I was going to say run interference. Interference might be the wrong word, but
Right.
to facilitate, to help
Right.
with
Right.
that, to know, to help prioritize the information you need, to help you figure out other ways to do it, because you can circumvent a party who doesn't want to participate in the process through a lot of various tools like subpoenas or other types of record requests. I don't need them to give me something. It's easier if they give us something that they have access to. But if they don't want to do it and we need it, we'll get it a different way. And that's not,
Right.
I'm going to issue a subpoena on for your bank records. That's not an offensive thing. That's a way to get, the complete record without having to download them for hours on end. That's just, it's
Right.
a tool. It's not an offensive gesture.
Awesome stuff. Thank you, Miss Alex.
Thank you.
And thank you all for listening to For Better or For Court Family Law in New Jersey. If you're feeling out of sync with your spouse, whether emotionally or legally, Alex can help you understand your rights and navigate your next steps with clarity. Visit HeymanFletcherLaw.com to learn more. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave a review and share this with someone that might find this information helpful as well. Thank you so much, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button and leave us a review in the comments.